everyone! Have you ever wondered how everything in the world started? Like the stars, the trees, the animals, and even you and me. Well, a very old and special book called the Bible tells us the amazing story right at the very beginning, in a book called Genesis. Genesis means the beginning, and it tells us that God, who is super powerful and super loving, made everything out of nothing. Can you imagine? On the first day, God said, "Let there be light." And poof, there was light. He separated the light from the darkness, calling the light day and the darkness night. The next day, God made the sky, like a big, beautiful blanket over our heads. Then, God gathered the waters together and dry land appeared. He called the dry land earth and the waters seas. And guess what? He also made all the plants, the grass, the trees, and even the tiny flowers, each with its own seeds so they could grow more. On the fourth day, God made the sun, the moon, and all the twinkling stars. They help us know when it's day or night, and they sparkle so beautifully in the sky. Next, God filled the waters with all sorts of swimming creatures, from tiny fish to giant whales. And He made all the birds that fly in the sky, chirping and singing. On the sixth day, God made all the animals that walk on the land, the lions, the elephants, the bouncy bunnies, and even the little ants. But the most special thing God made was on that same sixth day. He made people. He made the first man, Adam. Then, on the seventh day, after all that amazing work, God rested. And that's why we have a day for rest too. So, the first part of Genesis tells us that God is the amazing creator of everything we see and touch, and that He made it all good. Chapter 2. So, God had made a beautiful world, but there was no one to take care of it, or to enjoy it in a special way. The Bible says God formed a man from the dust of the ground. Can you imagine that? Like making a clay figure. And then, God did something amazing. He breathed into the man's nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living soul. God named him Adam. Adam was the very first person. God wanted Adam to have a wonderful home, so He planted a special garden called Eden. It was filled with all sorts of beautiful trees with yummy fruits to eat. And in the middle of the garden, there were two very important trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God told Adam he could eat from any tree in the garden, except for just one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He told Adam, "If you eat from that one, you will surely die." God saw that Adam was all alone, and He said, "It is not good for the man to be alone." So, God decided to make a helper for Adam, someone just right for him. God made Adam fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, God took one of Adam's ribs. And guess what? From that rib, God made the very first woman. When Adam woke up and saw her, he was so happy. He said, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." He called her woman, and later her name became Eve. Adam and Eve were God's very first family, living in a perfect garden with God. So, in Genesis chapter 2, we learn that God created people in a special way. He gave them a beautiful home, and He made them a family. Isn't God amazing? God loved Adam and Eve very much, and He gave them a wonderful job to take care of the whole garden. He also gave them one simple rule. If you do something not so good will happen. Now, in the garden, there was also a very clever, tricky snake. This snake came up to Eve and whispered, "Psst, Eve, did God really say you shouldn't eat from any tree?" Eve said, No, we can eat from all the trees, except for that one special tree in the middle. God said if we eat from it, something not so good will happen to us. The snake just smiled a sneaky smile and said, "Oh, that's not true. If you eat from it, you'll become super smart, just like God, knowing all about good and bad." Eve looked at the fruit on that tree. It looked so yummy, and she thought, "Wow, becoming super smart sounds amazing." So, she took a bite, and then she gave some to Adam, and he ate it too. Right away, something felt different. They suddenly felt a little bit shy, and they tried to hide. God came walking in the garden, and he called out, "Adam, Eve, where are you?" Adam said, "We heard you, God, and we felt a little bit shy, so we hid." God knew what had happened. He was sad because Adam and Eve didn't listen to his simple rule. Because they didn't listen, they couldn't stay in the perfect garden anymore. God still loved them, but things had changed. So, the story of Adam and Eve teaches us how important it is to listen to God and follow His good rules. Even when we make mistakes, God always loves us, and He always has a plan to make things right again. After Adam and Eve had to leave the beautiful garden, they had two sons. The first was named Cain, and the second was named Abel. Cain was a farmer, and he worked hard, growing yummy fruits and vegetables from the ground. Abel, his brother, was a shepherd, taking care of sheep. One day, both brothers wanted to give a special gift to God to show Him their love and thanks. Cain brought some of the fruits and vegetables he had grown. "Here, God, these are from my hard work." And God, who is so wise, spoke to Cain. "Why are you angry, Cain? Why is your face sad? If you do what is right, you will be accepted. But if you don't, watch out. Sin is like a crouching lion at your door, wanting to pounce on you. You must master it." God was warning Cain. He was saying, "Cain, you can choose to do good, or you can let that angry, jealous feeling take over." But Cain didn't listen to God's kind warning. Instead, he asked Abel to go out into the field with him. And out in the field, Cain, because he was so angry and jealous, did a terrible, sad thing. He hurt his brother, Abel, very badly. When God asked Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain tried to pretend he didn't know. "Am I my brother's keeper?" But God knows everything. God knew what had happened. Because of this sad choice, Cain had to leave his home and wander. So, what can we learn from this story? It teaches us how important our choices are. When we feel angry or jealous, like Cain, we have a choice. Will we listen to God's words and do what is right? Or will we let those bad feelings take over? God always wants us to choose love, kindness, and to do what is right. He helps us when we try to make good choices. Chapter 5. Now, this chapter is like a long list, but it's a super important list. It tells us about the very first families God made, starting with Adam. Genesis chapter 5 tells us a surprising thing. Adam lived for an incredibly long time, 930 years. Can you even imagine being that old? That's like living through so many birthdays. You'd need a super duper big cake. Adam had sons and daughters, and then he died. But the story doesn't stop there. One of Adam's sons was named Seth, and Seth also lived for a very, very long time, 912 years, and he had sons and daughters, and then he died. This chapter keeps telling us about Adam's family line, one after another. There was Enosh, who lived 905 years. Then Kenan, who lived 910 years. Next, Mahalalel, who lived 895 years. Then Jared, who lived 962 years. Wow! After Jared, there was Enoch. Now, Enoch is very special. The Bible says Enoch walked with God. That means he loved God very much and lived his life very close to God. He didn't die like everyone else. The Bible says God took him. Poof! God just took him because he was so special. Isn't that amazing? And after Enoch came Methuselah. Methuselah lived for an incredible 969 years. He lived longer than anyone else in this whole chapter. Can you say super duper old? Then he had a son named Lamech, who lived 777 years. And Lamech had a son named Noah. Yes, that Noah, who built the ark. But we'll hear more about him later. So, what does this very old family album tell us? It shows us how God's plan for families and people continued, generation after generation. Even though people died, life kept going, and God's family tree grew bigger and bigger. And it reminds us that even way back then, some people, like Enoch, loved God so much that they walked with God in a very special way. So, Genesis chapter 5 is not just a list. It's a story about the beginnings of God's family on earth and how life continued through many, many years.